Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about winter concrete mixes, what you don't know but should. So there's some things you probably don't know about pouring concrete in the winter, and there's definitely some things that you should know before you go ahead and just order concrete and get ready to pour. We live in Maine. We have 4 seasons here in Maine, and our winters go from really November 15th to about April 15th. That's what we call our winter concrete mix that we get from the concrete plants. So we're pouring a different type of mix in the winter than we do usually the other 3 seasons here in Maine. Now, one real big detail that maybe you don't know is in the winter here in Maine, in the concrete, they add hot water. So when they start out, let's say middle of November towards the end of November, when temperatures here in Maine, they still might get up into the 40s. You might have a day when it hits 50. But the nights are all getting below freezing. They'll crank the hot water up at the concrete plant, maybe to about 100 degrees. So the boiler gets up to about 100, and when they batch the concrete trucks, they put that 100-degree water into the concrete truck's water tank. And then when they actually mix that into the concrete, now the concrete's not going to come out at 100 degrees, but we're hoping the concrete is around 65, 68 degrees. As we're pouring it like this. So that's, you might not know that about concrete in the winter, is they do add hot water to it, and that's going to definitely increase the set times. Now this mix we're using today, this is a 3500 psi mix. It's got the hot water in it. It's actually, this water today was 120 degrees, so they bumped it up a little bit. The air temperature this morning is 30, so it's a little bit below freezing. So 3500 psi mix. We got water reducer in it, got hot water in it, got microfiber mesh in it, and a little bit of air entrainment just to help with freeze and thaw as they're building the house, because this stuff's going to go through a lot of freeze and thaw cycles before they get the house up, get it watertight. So that's our basic concrete mix. Now another thing that you probably don't know is, you're going to want to add some accelerator to this stuff too. It is going to dry pretty good because it's got, the warm concrete temperature and the hot water in it. But once you lay it out like this down to about 4 inches, this stuff cools off really fast. It's even going to cool off faster if you don't have styrofoam under it. So the styrofoam, the 2 inches of styrofoam under here is mainly for the radiant heat tubing that's in the floor. But what it does is it really helps the concrete retain its heat, not cool off quite so fast. So that helps the concrete set up even faster. But if you're pouring right on dirt, right on plastic, this stuff's going to cool off really fast. It's just going to slow right down the set times. And without any accelerator in it, you're going to be here all day. It gets dark here in Maine. This is December. It gets dark at about 4:15, 4:30 p.m. You'll be here well after dark power troweling this thing without accelerator, even if you do have warm water in it. So definitely got to put some accelerator in it. We usually use bag FLAKE accelerator, a couple bags, in 8, 9, 10 yards. But we're used to it, so you might not want to use quite that much. You can use liquid too. Now I just wanted you to listen to us screeding here and listen to what the concrete sounds like right now, because then I want you to listen to it later and listen and tell me if you can tell the difference. So just listen to this as we screed. All right, now I don't know if you could hear that, if you had to turn your volume up a little bit, but to me, that sounds like the concrete has like a smoothness type of sound as we're screeding it. It's not actually really that loud yet. And that's because the concrete still is fairly fluid here. It's still fairly loose. And what I mean by that is, another thing you don't know about winter mix concrete is when you have 120 degree hot water and you start adding especially FLAKE accelerator to it, you've got minutes, literally minutes, to get this stuff spread out, get it down, and get it screeded before it's starting to set up on you. So that's, by the time this is the first truck here, this was about 10 yards of concrete. We got to get that thing dumped out it's actually going to set up quicker in the concrete drum of the truck than it does once it's spread out like this, but it is going to set up really fast right here. So you got to get it spread out, get your pads magged and shot, get them struck with a screed, and then get it screeded here like we're doing right now really quickly. So all in all, that first truck, from the time you start dumping until the time you start bow floating, we got about 15 to 20 minutes before this stuff starts getting really hard to work with. And what I mean by hard to work with is not only hard to screed, hard to rake. So it'll change back to about what we started with, maybe as a 6-inch slump, down to around a 2-inch slump. That's how quick it'll start setting up, in about 15 to 20 minutes. And another thing I definitely know you probably don't know if you're not really experienced at pouring concrete is the type of cement that the concrete batch plant uses plays a huge role, a huge factor in the set times. So the cement we're getting here from this company is definitely from a different country. They used to buy it here in the United States, but the company they bought it from went out of business. So now they're buying it and having it, you know, it's getting shipped here on a boat, and then it gets picked up, and then it gets delivered to the concrete plant. So the difference with this dust versus the stuff they used to buy is this stuff is really, really fine. So, and for whatever reason, because it's made and it's a lot finer than the dust that we used to have, it sets up a lot quicker. So we would have, let's say, 20 to 30 minutes to get this down without starting to see a difference in the slump. Whereas now we have 15 to 20 minutes to get it down. So that's a big difference when you're laying down concrete. And then another thing you probably don't know is if your batchman or your concrete company uses fly ash or slag in the mix as a cement replacement, that concrete's going to set a lot slower than just a straight cement mix. So if you're looking for your concrete to set up a little bit quicker because it's getting really cold, then I would ask them just for a straight cement mix, no fly ash, no slag. That's what we ask for. All our floors done in the winter are straight cement mixes always. So there's a few things that you probably don't know about winter concrete mix that you should if you're going to be doing, you know, floors like this or slabs in the winter. Definitely need to know, like, how hot is the water? How much accelerator are you going to put in? How quickly does that accelerator start reacting with the concrete? And that's going to depend on how hot the water is too. That's going to make a big difference. What slump do you start pouring at? And if you're not using water reducer, like, you're not going to be able to stop pouring too loose with just plain water, then you're really going to weaken the concrete. So that's another reason we use water reducer in the mix, is so, you know, we can pour a fairly loose slump to start with, and then by the time we get done, that slump's already starting to tighten up a little bit. Now I want you to listen to this and see if you can tell a difference in the screeding now. Alright, so that was quite a bit louder screaming, and it just sounded like it was really setting up. Can you see the guys? They're kind of chopping the rest of that bay down to get it flattened out so we can pour the second truck over the top of what's left there. So this is the second truck now. Yeah, I'll let you listen to this again for a minute. Alright, so it's screeding off the first truck here. Let me know when you can tell I'm getting onto the second truck. There's going to be a big difference. Right there, that's the second truck. So big difference in the slump of the concrete, big difference in the sound, a big difference in how easy or hard it is to pull it down. So now we got some of the second truck concrete buttoned up against the first, and we're coming off that joint. Usually what we'll do is we'll take a few passes with the screed like that, and then we'll stop and we'll mag that joint and make sure it's nice and flat. But if it looks flat after we go over it like we just did, then we'll just get going. So most of the time, the second truck, here's something else you probably don't know, the second truck doesn't set quite as fast as the first, at least if they're batched out like the ones we are. The first truck at the concrete plant here, the first truck's aggregate, the stone, the sand, is inside the garage. So when they batch it out, it's been sitting in the bins, what they call the bins, the aggregate and the stone and the sand. That's inside the garage. So when they load these bins, they load them, you know, from the outside. All the aggregates sitting in big piles outside. They scoop them up in the loader and then they dump them in the bins. And then they get loaded into the concrete truck. You know, they drop it down out of the bins onto a conveyor belt and they get loaded into the concrete truck. Well, the first load of aggregate is inside the garage because they've been sitting in the bins overnight. So that aggregate, that sand, is a lot warmer than the second truck's is going to be. But by the time they load the first truck, you know, they got to reload the bins and all that stuff's been coming from stuff sitting outside. So the second truck typically doesn't set anywhere near as fast as the first truck. Now sometimes, knowing that, what we'll do is we might not put quite as much accelerator in the first truck as we do the second truck, because we know they're still going to end up setting at the same time, just knowing that the aggregate and the sand and stuff is a lot warmer, and we don't want the first truck setting up on us too fast. That's the new power screed from MBW, the new gas powered one, the new redesigned one they just made. They sent it to us, wanted us to try it. That's a 14-foot board there, and it worked really good on this floor, even with the concrete setting up the way it was. Still got it down really nice. Having it vibrating like that makes it a little easier to bull float too. So that's the house floor. Now we're going to move on to the garage. In the back of the garage is going to be like a utility room. So the builder, the guy building the house, wanted the back of the garage to kind of be at the same floor height as the house. So we're gonna pour about 6 feet of that, the same height, and we're gonna step it down into the garage part. And then from where it steps down out to the garage door, it's gonna slope 2 inches from the back of the garage to the front. And we'll just end up screeding the garage by hand, just because we normally screed stuff that's sloped by hand. And the back part we'll screed by hand too, just because it's so small. So that's going to be the utility room area. You know, they'll put the boiler in there and, you know, hook up all the radiant heat tubing in there and stuff like that. Probably the water tank. Really kind of a small garage for a brand new house if you think about it. That's 16 feet wide, and it was a total of 28 feet from back to front. So that they're knocking 6 feet out of that. So it's a 22 by 16 garage. That's basically just for I'd say a small car. So we showed up, you know, we set the forms here today. We were told how far back to put them. Obviously the height, top of wall, we're matching top of wall with the top of the form. And then we pin it in place, set it to grade, and then we do the same for the garage door. We'll set that form when we show up, get it in place. And now we're still on the second truck. The second truck's not going to quite finish everything, so we'll have a third truck show up to finish everything. But we want it right now, you know, now that we're probably 10 minutes or so into this second truck, we can start to feel it setting up a little bit on us. So we definitely want to get it dumped out, you know, and get him out of here. And then get this screeded down as fast as we can before it starts setting up too quick on you. If the concrete starts setting up really quick, you know, we probably still pouring about a 6 slump right here. But that can go from a 6 to a 4 to a 2 in just a matter of minutes if you're not really fast getting this stuff down. You can see the steam coming off it. So we want to make sure we get it dumped out, get it spread out while it's still pretty loose, get our edges all magged, and then get the screeding done while it's still kind of loose like this. Otherwise we're going to struggle getting this thing down. We don't want to do that. That's happened plenty of times over the years. So we've experienced it a lot, and it's always a battle when you're going from, let's say, summer, fall concrete mix into your winter mix, into when they start using warm water. It's always a little bit of a guessing game, depending on, okay, we got warm concrete today because they're using warm water. We still want to use accelerator, otherwise we're going to be here late into the night. How much accelerator do we use based on how warm the concrete is? That's always a little bit of a guessing game to start with. Sometimes you guess a little bit too much accelerator, sometimes you don't guess enough, and then after a few pours you usually get it figured out, and you know just how fast you got to go based on how hot the concrete feels and then how much accelerator you're putting in. Also, the yardage of the concrete truck will matter too. If you got an 8-yard concrete truck versus a 10 or a 10.5 yard truck, that's going to depend on how much accelerator you add to that truck also. Now, a lot of you guys, you don't use the bag flake like we do. You use the liquid accelerator. So if you just ask for 1% or 2%, then that's not really going to matter. Your yardage then isn't going to matter. They're going to give you 1% no matter what yardage you have, or 2% based on whatever yardage you have for the liquid stuff. We've used the liquid stuff in the past quite a bit. It definitely doesn't set as good as the flake stuff, I don't think. And then another thing I don't like about using it in the winter with warm water is, they usually put that liquid accelerator in right at the concrete plant. So now your accelerator is in the truck riding in the mix all the way to the job. Like this job here was an hour for them to get to. So sometimes, depending on how fast that guy spins the drum on the way to the job, that stuff, it's starting to take off right when you're starting pouring. So it comes down the chute and the concrete's already really hot. So you got to stop him. You got to add more water. So he adds more water. You get a little bit dumped out, and it's already starting to set up. You stop him. You got to add more water again. It's just too unpredictable. I feel with the liquid accelerators. Sometimes they'll go off really fast. Sometimes they won't go off at all. We can just predict these a little bit better. So that's probably another thing you don't know about pouring in the winter that you should, is you got to be really careful on the types of accelerators you use. So look, I just want you to listen to the rest of this and tell me what you guys think down in the comments about some of these things that you probably don't know that you should, or if you want to add to that, add that down in the comments about the accelerators. But I'm just talking basically about pouring this. We got to think about finishing here too. We want to get this thing power troweled, sawed today, and it's only going to be in the 30s. Now I will tell you, on this job, the boys had it all power troweled and sawed and recovered. We covered this with blankets when we were done by 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And this right here, we're finishing this garage up is around 8, probably between 8 and 8:30 a.m. in the morning right now. And you'll see at the end of the video that before we even get done bow floating, Darren's already getting back on the house floor with the skids, starting the finishing process. So it wasn't very long after we got done pouring that we were putting the power trowels right back on this and starting the power trowel. So this stuff set up really good for us today. And if you don't know that kind of thing about winter concrete, or if you don't know how to use hot water in the concrete with accelerators, then you're going to be here all night finishing. I've recently had some people ask me about concrete floors that they've just had poured, where the guys were literally on the floor all night into the next day before they even got them finished with a power trowel. And the people were asking me, hey, is that going to be all right? Is my concrete going to be all right? Well, yeah, it probably will be, as long as it doesn't freeze, and you get it covered after, it's going to cure up all right. It's just that they don't have, those people that poured don't have the experience and the knowledge to know what they need to know when you're pouring in really cold temperatures like this. So this is my cold weather concrete mix. I'll say it again. We use a 3500 psi. It's got about 120 degree hot water. We use water reducer in the mix. We use microfiber mesh. We definitely use accelerators in the mix, and we even have some air entrainment in the mix for freezing and thawing. So let me know what you guys think, and just listen to the rest of the video so you can hear what this sounds like.
I know you want, Darren. It's partly my fault. I won't behind you. Really won't go for it. Mm.